Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Janine Between the Lanes. I missed you all. It's good to be back. How are you doing? I've been a busy bee. If you aren't already, I highly recommend you guys follow Memory Lane Morning Show on all of these avenues. You're already listening to podcasts. I'm not neglecting this podcast. I've actually been in such a reading frenzy that I have so many books to update you guys about, and it's about time that I recorded. Anyways, how are you guys? I've missed you all. Lots of books that have been kind of shoved in my mind that I can't wait to talk about. But anyways, life's been pretty good. I am currently kind of an inspiration that made me have the urge to record. I've really been newly obsessed with Emma Chamberlain's podcast, Anything Goes, and she makes me feel really, really comfortable with myself. The fact that she loves to kind of just lay back and ramble on and go on and on about her thoughts, and it makes me feel a little bit better about myself and kind of just talking about the things that I want to freaking talk about. So that's what I'm going to do today, is talk about the things that I want to freaking talk about. So I do have a grand total of about 4 books that I want to talk about, all from different genres, but in honor of AAPI month, I think I did an episode last year where I talked about a book written by an Asian author. So I kind of wanted to do the same and talk about a stunning piece of work called Sigh, which we'll talk about later. I'll kind of briefly touch on the ones that I also read, the 3 other books, but the main focus is going to be on Sigh by Phuc, Tran. So, if you want to hear my thoughts on these books and kind of go into the down and dirty about them, it's a really good one, just so you know. And also give me your I thought my little intro music was kind of cute. Let me know how you guys like that. So thank you so much for tuning in. Rate, review, share it if you want to. And I hope you guys enjoy the episode. So I will say, the beginning of the year started off kind of rocky in terms of the satisfaction of the books that I was reading, but ever since I finished The Remains of the Day, that was probably at the end of April, I've been pulling in some bangers lately, and I read about 4 books within the span of a couple months, which I'm usually a serial reader, but with life and stuff, I would consider that an accomplishment. So I made it a thing, and I have held myself pretty accountable that I'm going to write down all of the books that I've been reading, kind of rate them in my own little rating system, and just keep a log of the ones that I loved and the ones that I didn't love and why. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, it's Janine Between the Lines on Instagram as well. I do have a little highlight of the books that I am in the process of reading, and a highlight where I kind of rate each of the books when I finish them. So I actually, since my last episode, I have knocked down 4 books that I have. Honestly, they've been great. All of them were pretty freaking good, higher ratings than the last. So the ones I'm going to talk about today are not in chronological order, but The Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos, and then Sigh by Phuc Tran, which is going to be the later half of this episode because there's so much I want to talk about. So I'll kind of briefly touch on the other books that I read. All of them have kind of secured a 7 to 8 out of 10 rating, but Winter's Promise, that one was a 10 out of 10. So when I left the earlier podcast, I was talking about how I was craving a good not healthy, but like kind of smutty, but definitely like I was in a romantic mood. So I picked up The Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, and I thought it was really good. It really kind of satisfied that aching bone in my nerd body that wanted a little bit of romance in my life in terms of my reading content. So it was cute. Definitely had the steam that I was looking for, and I don't believe that it was too much of like a try hard, like to be cutesy and romantic. Part of me felt like the Colleen Hoover book I talked about was a little try hard, and this one was not. It was pretty much Naomi and Knox. They're the main characters. Naomi went to a small town trying to find and kind of solve the problems of her problematic little sister, and she goes there, falls in love with Knox, gets into, a few little dilemmas here and there. But yeah, I thought that the romance was fitting. It wasn't, it wasn't over the top. And I love the fact, there are a few things that I love that I took note on. My favorite part of it all is pretty much I commended the notion that everyone in the book was not trying to change Tina and her ways. Because I feel like too many books try to go, transform the quote unquote bad characters into someone who's actually going to change for their family or better themselves and everything. But I think it's a more realistic outtake to be like, okay, this is how my sister's going to be. She's never going to be fit enough to care for her daughter. So Naomi and Knox, took the lead on that. And that's fine. Like, you can't change everybody. So I was happy about that. And I'm also glad that, so Knox has a brother who they paint out to be this run-of-the-mill, super attractive, blonde hair, blue eyes officer who has his head on straight, does everything right, and Knox is the tough-hardened, like, stud of a guy who seemingly seems that he doesn't care about anything, but eventually falls in love with Naomi/Daisy. So there were opportunities in this book where the brother could have tried his hand at trying to be with Naomi, which would have taken that book to a very typical, like, brother v brother, who's gonna win, the gal, who's the center of attention. And I'm really glad that Lucy Score didn't take it there. I was just really tired of, like, because I felt like Colleen Hoover's was a typical plot. This one wasn't like a just generic kind of like romantic plot, and I really liked that. I mean, parts of it are like predictable, but I was pleasantly surprised at a few turns in the book, and I got the seaminess that I was craving. So I would recommend it if you're craving a kind of like small town romance. If you're in that kind of mood, yeah, I would highly recommend that one. So I gave that one a 7 out of 10. I also gave a 7 out of 10 to 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, which I was shocked. So I pre-saved both of these. I read both of these electronically on my Kindle. And on the bookstagrams that I follow, everyone was saying that 7 Days in June was the one I needed to read right now. I This one was actually a slow start for me. So I don't know if it's me or if anyone out there feels the same way. But in regards to the writing, it's not even the writing style. I feel in ways embarrassed / super cringe when I read about the how like teenagers and the generations before us are growing up. So the main character, let me pull up my little notes here real quick. So the main character has a daughter. Eva has a daughter named Audrey, and Audrey is a middle school kind of, she's a genius. She's awesome. And she is a renowned in her school, somewhat of like a therapist / psychologist, and she's a queen. And I just get really uncomfortable thinking about how immersed elementary school / middle school kids are just wrapped around technology and are just very self-aware of like adult struggles and how to talk about adult things. Also the fact that she's kind of like, oh, well, on my Twitter and on my blog, I don't know. I think my discomfort just arises from me never going through that. And I'm like, oh my God, you're in elementary / middle school. Why aren't you going out? And is this a very like problematic traditional take of me? Like, I don't want my kid to be giving relationship advice or like, I don't know, like advice to other kids and being very immersed in like the internet and the news and entertainment and the here and now. Like, I don't know, go outside and play some sports or play in the dirt. I mean, elementary, I guess. What was I doing in elementary school? I was reading, maybe watching some TV here and there, but I mean, it's realistic. Like Tia Williams, this is how kids are growing up now. They're very intertwined and very involved in each other's lives. And this is how, teenagers these days connect. They all have iPhones and they all follow these celebrities and XYZ and are aware and are very articulate and very, like, she's a smart little lady. So that part, like listening to, or reading, I should say, reading about Audrey's little side hustle and all of that, it just made me a little bit uncomfortable on just my side, like a personal level. And that kind of like deterred me a little bit from reading forward because it was just talking about the relationship at first. However, it got really good. And I was on the plane. I was going to Hawaii. And I was on the way. And I was like, you know what? Let me just pick this book back up again. It's got to go into this. It had to be a world-renowned book for a reason. So when it came to the dynamic of Eva and Shane and them getting into that, I love a good rewind, fast forward to the future, rewind, tell me what's happening in the past, then fast forward of what's going on now. That's like my kind of book. So as the relationship of Eva and Shane developed, oh man, it got hella good. It was pretty spicy. It was really like, I don't think people understand. Yes, people understand. I'm being dramatic. But the beauty and the tragedy of the trauma bond between Eva and Shane, but also Eva and her mother, was pretty breathtaking. I'd say that there were a few instances in this book where I definitely got a little misty-eyed, a little foggy there, and I definitely had moments where I had a little dramatic and just held my phone to my chest in regards to the romantic moments in this book. And yeah, I thought it was a beautiful sentiment that Shane and Eva, not even subconsciously, but they consciously like derived their success in their writing to, you know, stories about their histories with each other. And it wasn't cliche, but it rounded out to a very beautiful ending. And maybe I would give it an 8 out of 10. I did love it. And I'm so happy, like, for some reason at the end when, I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but at the end when Shane had the dilemma of, you know, being there for Eva and Audrey and wasn't able to make a certain event because a traumatic event happened, I really thought, like, towards the end, I was speed reading at the end. I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Is this going to be a bad ending? Are they, like, not going to end up together? Are they going to end up together? I was surprised at the end and gladdened by how it ended up with the two of them. So I actually highly recommend this book as well. It was a slower start for me, but not in the worst way in the world. So, you know, I totally forgot to do this, but there are a couple quotes in each of those books that I kind of wanted to read that kind of stuck out to me. So in The Things We Never Got Over, this is the one that I related to, and I kind of felt personally attacked. So, let me see. This one was with Naomi, and I think it was a conversation with Naomi and Knox, and this is how it starts. So Knox said, oh no, it wasn't Knox. It was a woman. Oh, it was the social worker. It was the social worker and Naomi when they were talking about Waylay's future. Waylay is the daughter of Tina. Tina is the problematic sister and who abandoned Waylay, who was the daughter that she's now taking in. So the social worker starts out and says, can I give you some advice? She says, please do. And then social worker says, at some point, you have got to stop worrying so much about what everyone else needs and start thinking about what you need. Then Naomi says, I would think that selflessness was a good quality in a guardian. The social worker says, so is setting an example for your niece about how she doesn't need to turn herself inside out to be loved, how she doesn't need to set herself on fire to keep someone else warm. Demanding to have your own needs met isn't problematic. It's heroic, and kids are watching. They're always watching. If you set an example that tells her the only way she's worthy of love is by giving everyone everything, she'll internalize that message. And she says, there's a difference between taking care of someone because you love them and taking care of someone because you want them to love you. Dang. That's it. I thought that one was really hit home for me. I'm such a, and meanwhile, keep in mind, during all of these books that I'm reading, I'm sprinkling in the Set Boundaries, Find Peace book that's super self-attacking and healing at the same time. And yeah, I definitely relate to that because I am such a do everything for everyone, because that's my way of telling people that I can be there for them, or that I am a good friend, or that I am worthy of being part of their lives or like involved in their lives. And that's been something that I've kind of held on and that I'm working through at this current time. So it's not always the best thing in the world, basically, to be selfless, because in ways taken to an extreme account, that means it will eventually turn into you not caring for yourself, and self-care is a big thing that Mama over here is trying to prioritize. So I thought that one was really good. And then in 7 Days in June, let me scroll on down to my highlights on Kindle. Oh my God, this one was really cute. I thought this one was really cute. So Ty is one of Shane's mentees. So he's mentoring him. He came from a troubled neighborhood in school that he taught at. So Ty was feeling this girl that he saw at a conservatory. Was it an observatory? It was one of the two. So he says, how you know when you're feeling a girl? And it's funny because Ty never really asks questions. It's always a statement. Like, it sounds like a question, like he's trying to ask a question, but it never is an actual question. So he just says straight up, like with no question mark in there, how you know when you're really feeling a girl. And then Shane goes into trying to define this for him. Oh, it was a planetarium, not a conservatory or an observatory. I'm such a nut. But basically he says, when it's real, you won't even have to ask the question. It just hits you, kind of like being shot. And then Ty's like doubtful. He's like, what do you mean, like being shot? So Shane goes, hear me out. It's like you know something dramatic happened, but you don't know your insides have been ripped open until after the fact. That's what falling in love is like. When it's real, you don't fall in love with any awareness. You don't get a say. You get hit effing hard and then process it later, you know? And then Ty's like, I ain't trying to get shot, fam. Well, that's kind of, I mean, I thought that was a very sweet and not dramatic, but it's a very telling way of how Shane felt about Eva when they first met. And I agree. I mean, there are some that may not agree with that. Like, falling in love isn't always a bursting, immediate thing. I think love can be slow and learned. But I think what Shane is talking about is the realization usually is like, oh shoot, like, yeah, like I think I freaking love you, you know? Not to be sappy or anything, but that's how Teddy and I came about. Anyways, yeah, I definitely like looked over at Teddy long, like, do you remember when we fell in love? So yeah, all the freaking feels. All the feels. Before I get into Saigon, because there's so many quotes and so many things I want to say about that one, I do want to briefly touch on A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. Excuse me, 10 out of 10. Excuse the 10 out of 10 out of me. Christelle Dabos, first of all, who are you and who do you think you are storming into my life this way? I haven't loved a book this much until, I don't know what I love more, A Court of Thorns and Roses or this one. I said it. Oh my God. It's crazy. Oh my God. So shout out to None Such Books and More. They're my favorite local bookstore. But one of the employees working there, they have a very sweet employee recommendation book section, and the cover, like, they have a little bookmark where they put why they recommended it, and basically the card said, this is Harry Potter meets Jane Austen, and I was like, all right, bet. Like, it had the coolest cover on it, and that's how you're setting it off. I was like, all right, this is the one. So I decided to bring 2 books to vacation. And when I tell you, I drank this thing so quickly. I had to stop myself from reading so fast. And here, like, they were right, obviously. Thank you, whoever recommended it. I need to find that person and just hug them. Here's the thing, though. The character development in this book is pristine. Secondly, I'm not even going to say it moves slow. it's just, you can really tell that she's building this series so that you are literally aching for more. And I would even throw a little bit of Game of Thrones into that mix of like what it's reminiscent of. So Game of Thrones meets Harry Potter meets Jane Austen. What else could anyone ask for? You know, the imagery that is this book is just so, it's stunning. It's stunning. The pictures that are just contrived in my head after reading this. Like can I add another? Everyone's going to be like, is this like the freaking book of all time? But all right. Here's the real cocktail that this is. It's Harry Potter meets Jane Austen meets Game of Thrones meets The Hunger Games. And you're like, how is that even possible? I'm not going to give anything away. You have to read it. That's how you will know. It's real. So that's kind of all I want to give away. Like, the plot is amazing. The characters are amazing. If they don't turn this into, actually, I say this now, I might regret it, but I was going to say, if they don't turn this into a series or a movie or something like that, I will die. But the selfish part of me wants to gatekeep this and preserve it so that it doesn't turn into a film, so that I can keep these thoughts in my head and this world in my head so that it still looks as stunning as it is, just as it is on paper. And I was in Hawaii when I finished it, but I automatically ordered the next 2 books, and there's one coming out in August. So somebody please read this with me and let's talk about it. We're going to go on to a little baby break, and then I'm going to dive headfirst into Saigon. So, however you listen to podcasts, if you're eating a snack right now, just kick back, go grab a snack or something, and stay tuned for my full review on Saigon by Phuc Tran. See you in a little bit. All right, so Saigon. I was recommended this book by my hairstylist. Shout out to Jade Woods 207. She eventually will be a guest on this show as well. So, basically, I haven't read a book that I have this closely identified with in a very long time. And I thought it was just super opportune that it was API Heritage Month and I could talk about this. So just a few things about the book. So the author is actually a resident of Portland, Maine as well. He's a tattoo artist and seems like a very, very cool guy. I've actually messaged back and forth with him on Instagram, and he just seems like pretty sweet, you know? So this book is pretty much a coming-of-age style memoir about his family's immigration to a town in Pennsylvania, and it talks about his kind of turmoil and teenage years and growing up in a predominantly white town. And there are just so many parts in this book that I never thought that anyone else could feel. And it's kind of not earth-shattering. I'm so dramatic today. It's shocking to me because this takes place in the 70s, 80s, and he's growing up. He's in middle to high school in that 70s, 80s era. And for me, I was in middle high school in the 2010s. And you know how everyone talks about how, the trend cycle and things coming back. And right now we're kind of in the thick of that as well. Like the return of low-rise jeans, Y2K, all of that. I feel like music has also reverted back to old school reminiscent beats, and just styles are kind of, their trends are circling back, whether it's fashion, whether it's music, whether it's, just a whole lot of like old school throwback things. Oh my God, Tumblr's coming back? Is Tumblr coming back? That's what I've heard that as well. That's just in passing. But I just feel like it's so cool yet crazy to me that his upbringing that was over like 30 years prior to mine, around the time that he was in high school, that was like 30 years ago for me. They are still so similar, and there's such a tight and relatable tie between the childhoods that we had being born from immigrant parents. So I wasn't born in the Philippines. I was born in Florida, but our stories are just so similar, and he is Vietnamese and I'm Filipina. So even though they're two different types of Asian, the fact that his struggles were so close to mine, is it wrong for me to say it feels good? I don't know if it's wrong, but like I said, I've never related so hard. So I have like 4 or 5 different excerpts that really kind of hit home to me. And this man said it loud and clear, just straight out of the prologue. And this was like the quote, how I knew that I was going to love this book. He said, "I realized that there was some prestige in being smart, or at least appearing smart. Sounding smart was not the same social Teflon as being good looking or athletic or funny, but hell, if someone could give me some props for being good at school, I would take nerd props over no props at all. I got 0 props for being Vietnamese or bilingual or a refugee." And that's the, not the epitome, but that's like the peak Asian characteristic, isn't it? I'm going to probably say a few problematic things that I don't mean to, and or things that are somewhat like revealing of things in my childhood that I've never talked about out loud, but this book gave me confidence to talk about it. So yeah, that's definitely like growing up, everyone associates Asians with being smart. I will tell you guys, I get grief about this all the time, but I'm definitely not on the level of a lot of other Asians that I know. But I definitely rode that smart Asian train when I was in middle to high school as well. Not just because that was the stereotype, but also in Filipino families, that is the priority as well, is getting good grades and being punished if you weren't. So automatically I was like, oh God, this is going to be one that really that really hits home for me. And then still, like in the prologue, I put a little sticky in something I want to talk about, is this excerpt right here. He says, "If you catch me in my off-guard moments, I'll tell you that at some points in my life, I wanted to be white. It's not a proud feeling, but it's not a feeling that comes from the shame of being brown. It's a tired feeling, tired of the crushing racism, tired of not belonging. It's the exhaustion from fighting for your right to exist. Getting called a chink at any age is painful, whether you're 5, 15, or 35. Damn it, I'm not even Chinese, but that didn't even matter. That didn't matter." And I don't remember, I've been recording for how many years? 2 years? I don't remember if I told you guys this story, but I was immediately taken back in time to 6th grade in science class, and I had a lab partner. Her name was, let's just call her Katie. So Katie was a very, at the time, I saw her as very beautiful. She was a popular gal, and middle school me, I wasn't in a popular crowd or anything like that. Like, I had my group of friends, mostly Asian friends, and I was assigned to be her partner because our last names were similar to each other. And when I tell you, I was so excited to be Katie's partner. The reason why I was excited was, one, because she was a popular girl, and I thought possibly being her lab partner and being, this was one of those science projects where it would have to be like a few weeks. Like, we would have to work together either outside of class or stay after school together and get this done, right? So I thought that Katie and being her lab partner was going to be my road to success and my road to speaking to all the popular kids that I wanted to, and to speaking to the boys that I had crushes on. And Katie was white. She was I don't want to say typical, but she was the picture perfect. She had the middle school uniform on. Like, if you knew that you were the it girl, if you were decked out in like Hollister, Abercrombie, so many colors of Vera Bradley bags, Sperry's, and that was the girl that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a popular white girl. That was me. I can truly say that. And that is not by no means. You catch me never being in a Hollister store at that age. I would just walk past it in the town center, like lusting after going in there with all their shirtless pics, and oh my God, the smell of it. But not in a million years at that age was my mom going to buy me a $20, $30 shirt. She was never going to walk into a Hollister and get me jeans, or jeans with rips all over them, or shorts that were nowhere near the knee. And when I was growing up, our like back to school shopping and things like that, I could either choose between wanting to get a really nice backpack or a better pair of shoes. Because if my shoes weren't worn out or anything, why would I buy new shoes for the new year? Why would I have 50 different colored bags? Like, it was a testament to our very, very middle state of being in the middle class. Like, I don't think that we were high class or high middle class or low middle class. We were straight middle. Like, my parents had good jobs, but definitely we were in that like middle tier. So me back on track to being Katie's science / lab partner. I reveled in being around her and being seen with her, simply because of her status and simply because she was white. And what ended up happening was Katie came over to my house, I think once, and that one time was a parallel to the 1% of work that she did on the project that we were assigned. So it was kind of a project about like plants, and we had some preserved plants that we were trying to put into a project, and we would tell the genus and species and show the class and put them in binders and whatnot. And when I tell you that she brought one plant to this project. She did one thing, and then I was doing the research and the brunt work of writing everything down and, you know, getting things together and getting supplies and laminating our presentation and XYZ. And I just took it. Like, no questions asked. I did 99% of the work, and I still felt thankful that she was even talking to me or being in my presence, or even would say she would give me like sweet things because I was just doing the work needed for this science project. Oh, and don't be mistaken, after the science project was done, no, we were not friends. I was completely used. I was bamboozled, but it was a very short-lived victory for me to be in the presence of one of our middle school goddesses because she was white and because she was living the materialistic dream that I wanted to live. And I was living straight through her, and it was sad. It was sad that I felt that way and that I idolized her like that because she was of a higher stature than I am, in my opinion, back then. So that quote really took me back, and, you know, I'm not ashamed of it. I mean, I can reflect on it, and I can feel, I don't feel remorse, but that's just how my mind was working back in 6th grade, you know? One of the other quotes that kind of took me on a trip is, it was page 92, 93 or so, and the author talks about the concept of change. So he's reflecting on a spat he had with his father. And basically it doesn't start with this, but it's a couple paragraphs that sent to me. So it said, "The past pulled us and the future pushed us. The tension of tenses. We lived in the past, the present, and the future. It wasn't only laid out in my grandparents, my parents, and me. It was in our relationships. It was in how we treated one another and how we looked at one another, heedless of who we actually were. My adult uncles were still slapped as if they were children. We could never grow up in our parents' eyes, but they could not grow or change in ours either. Our past behaviors, our present needs, and our future goals, all of them snares. But even if the past is unchangeable, maybe our perspectives of the past can change. And maybe the way we see past events can change. And if that can change, maybe the past event itself does change, not in action or outcome, but in purpose and intent." I don't really have any words for that. It was just very powerful to me. And there are, growing up in a Filipino household, I have so many unrecountable experiences of being, quote unquote, abused, whether it's physically, mentally, verbally, by my parents. Which in Saigon, there are so many examples of that as well. Like, I feel like that's something that I relate to football on a very intimate level too, is the abuse that we collectively went through as children that have made us who we are today. I just remember there's a part in this book where Phuc tries to run away, and he was a lot more successful than I was. I probably got to down the street, but there are so many instances where I've just crushed my eyes together, stinging tears in my head, just proclaiming how much I hated my parents and how much I wanted a different life and I wanted to live somewhere else and I can't take this anymore. And there's nothing, I'm 26 years old now. Like I'm not going to go back and relive those memories, you know, and that those events are never going to go away and they'll never leave my memory. But that's not something that is something that has shaped me into who I am today, you know? And what we do with that information and what we do with those experiences is what matters, and how it can shape how we treat other people, how we treat our kids, and how we let that affect our future interactions with everyone we encounter, you know? So, yeah, I'm a big supporter of using the abuse to fuel my future. Does that make any sense? I hope it does. I have like a couple more. Like, I can't stress enough. I've been wanting to put all of my close friends on this book, and I want to know, and listeners, I want to know if you guys relate to the same things that I do. Send me a message or comment on a post or send me a DM. Let me know if you've read this and if there are parts in this book that you feel you related more closely to. I think that would be really fun. We could talk about it together. I have a couple more. So I'm turning to my page 203. Oh, this was a good one too. So there was a Phuc and his father had a fight, right? And this is the quote. So he said, "My father and I never talked about what happened, and by that summer our silence with each other was bridged slowly by one-word replies and brief question. The truce was easier than the truth." The truce was easier than the truth. And I have one memory in mind when it comes to this. And I don't think they will, but if my mom and dad are listening, these are just memories that I have. Mom and dad, I love you. But I remember distinctly a fight that my father and I had. And it was stemmed from a missing. So when I was growing up, we would all do our laundry together, right? And my laundry, my dad was missing a shirt. And this was a huge problem. So because we all do our laundry together, my dad was boiling over with anger, screaming at all of us and saying that we lost his shirt, and eventually it just became centralized on me losing his shirt. So during this bout of anger and this bout of yelling and this bout of insults and this bout of searching through all of my stuff, my dad, in his one of many like bouts of rage, my mom bought me like a beautiful pack of crayons. It wasn't one of those typical crayon boxes. It was the one with like 100 colors and 7 different versions of blue. You know what I'm talking about. Super smooth, brand new. And my dad threw them on the ground and he stepped on all of them and broke most of them It was spread out all over my room, and he demanded and screamed that I pick them all up right now because of this rage. Needless to say, tears streaming down my face, silence, just taking it. That was kind of the theme of my childhood too. Whenever I was in trouble or being yelled at despite being right, we just had to take it. And the mindset is, this is just how dad is. This is just how mom is. We just had to take it, even if they were in the wrong. So picking up my crayons and crying and just screaming inside. Minutes go by, and guess where the shirt is? It's in his closet. He hung it up where it was supposed to be in his closet, and he couldn't find it. When I tell you I wasn't that old. I was probably 7 or 8. The 7 to 8 to 9-year-old rage that I felt inside was palpable. It was pulsating. Like, I couldn't believe it. All of that I went through, all the tears, my ruined collection, just done. And guess what happened? My dad went about life for the next couple days just acting like nothing happened. Right? No apology. No reference to what ensued. No, he didn't buy me any more crayons. And what I did, my immediate, and I'm the baby. So there was even, I know older children are going to speak out and say, yeah, right. But there was even less tolerance for me to make mistakes than my older brothers. And so it was right after that day, I was kind of giving everyone the silent treatment, and I was giving my dad the silent treatment as well. Obviously, I was so upset. And it's funny. My mom, we were going to church, and I was still giving the silent treatment, and my dad he gets really shrill whenever he's upset. To this day, he's just a shrill, upset person when he gets to that level. And my mom, I think my dad was asking me, it's a little bit foggy now, but he was asking me why I was being so quiet. And I just wouldn't answer. And then that made him even more upset. So when we were on our way to church, my mom stopped me before we got in the car. And she said, Anak, you need to go apologize to your dad. And I was like, what? In my head, I was like, are you kidding me? And this was the first time that I ever kind of addressed this with my mom. But I was like, Mom, what do I have to apologize for? I was like, it was him who had his own shirt in his closet. Shouldn't he apologize to me for screaming at me, for making a mistake and destroying all of my crayons? And I said that with my little 7, 8-year-old voice. And she was like, it's not about that. You guys just need to make up. Just go give your dad a hug and a kiss, and then everything will be better. And I was like, why can't dad apologize for a mistake that he made? And Phuc's mom in this book seems like she's the same. She's the peacekeeper. But at that early encounter, I realized that there's no saying sorry. Even if my dad ever made a mistake, there's no instance where he was wrong about anything. And I agree. By that summer, our silence with each other was bridged slowly by one-word replies and brief questions, and that's everything was just fizzled. That was the way that arguments were solved between parent and child in my household. My dad was never wrong, never apologized about anything, and never opened up about anything in that regard. And it was just our expectation to take it. So that one was a tough reflection for me, and I really felt that one after reading it. I think there were a couple more that I wanted to mention. Actually, just this last one. So in the chapter of the Iliad on page 281, he's talking about, so now fast forward, he's in high school, and basically he has been elected to be a speaker at their graduation. And he's letting his dad know that he was chosen. So basically, he's talking to his dad, and he says, like, oh yeah, I'll be speaking at graduation. And his dad was like, why you? Why did they choose you? And he's like, wow. And he was like, well, in the newspaper. And he was really proud to tell them that he was going to be speaker. But his father kept saying, like, oh, why? Like, do you have anything good to say? What are you going to say? And then, like, how many other kids are speaking? And he goes into being like, oh yeah, well, it's me, the valedictorian for the kids. And then his little brother's like, oh, what's a valedictorian? He goes, that's the best student in the graduating class. And basically just shooting him down this thing that he was really proud to tell his parents of. And so he goes on to say, I brought up being graduation speaker because I wanted to share it with my family. Why? Because no matter how alienated I felt from my parents, I kept returning to a deep and undeniable need for their praise and approval. What would have made being graduation speaker better? Knowing that my parents were really proud of me, really proud, and the feeling that they saw me. It was a gamble I took, and I was poorly rewarded by my mother's reflexive praise and my father's cutting inquiry. Another failed connection for our history books. That is very relatable for me. I just remember, like, a sentiment that I sometimes struggle with and still somewhat believe to this day is I used to associate all of my success with the reasoning being I'm doing this for my parents. A little of that was my grandparents as well. And I don't think that's exactly in my specific instance. Like, I can see how a little bit of that is problematic, but also internally that was a lot. It was a lot of the reason and a lot of my motivation for deciding to excel in everything that I've ever done. Like, when it comes to getting my bachelor's and going into nursing, it's like I didn't specifically do it just for my parents, but in the back of my mind, I was always like, I just want to make my parents proud, which also, I said I wasn't going to mention that last quote, but the reason why, there's another quote in the book where he talks about where can I find it? I had it bookmarked. There's one where he talks about the sacrifices that his parents made in order to get him, to the place he is now. Here it is. It's in the same chapter of the Iliad. So he said, in retrospect, I realized how my parents draped the hopes of college and greatness upon me, their eldest born. They snuffed out their own ambitions, exchanging their dreams for their children's, hoping that our lives would be full of possibilities and free from devastation. My vague but lustrous potential would be built upon the heavy shards of their broken futures. And that's, that's kind of at the root of how I operated as well, because both of my parents, technically, especially my mom, she grew up on a farm. She's a farm girl. They came from nothing. When I go to visit my mom's hometown in Iloilo, it shakes me every time, the fact that she grew up in a tiny hut like that and made her way to America and now has had a job that has sustained us and has given us the privilege to be raised in America and not, be hungry or not really want for anything. And is that guilt? Is that guilt that I feel that I have to succeed and I have to be successful and I have to have a good job and be able to provide and look out for my parents and do these things to make my parents proud because of everything that they've sacrificed and went through to get me here? I think it is. And, my grandparents are the same way, especially on my mom's side. Like, my mom would always tell us how her mom and dad would sell, every little bit of rice they had. They would sell their house. They would move, all just so that my mom could finish her school and finish nursing school so that eventually she'd be able to take care of them, And I feel like that is a very common sentiment in Filipino culture. I guess Asian culture as well. In general. Tell me if I'm wrong. Send me a message if I'm wrong. But yeah, I've just always felt this kind of pressure to do right by my parents because of everything that they've done for us and sacrificed for us, to a point where I attribute a lot of my successes to that motivation and their watchful eyes, like being on a spotlight and knowing that they're watching to see not my next move, but my next big accomplishment. And like I said, I think that there's a positive and negative. There's like a duality to it, because on the positive side, yes, it has motivated to be where I am and as quote unquote successful as I am. But also, is it really them that's motivating me to do that? Or am I doing it to make myself happy and not just make my parents and my grandparents proud? Something to reflect on, So, needless to say, Sigh gone. 10 out of 10. Would recommend to all of my listeners to read and dive into. I will definitely be following Tran, the author, too. I would love to read more books from him, and who knows, maybe I'll pay a visit, go get tattooed by him. He does some great work. You guys should check him out on Instagram. It's Phuc Skywalker. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, too. But yeah, those were the books that I've read up to this point. Right now, I'm reading, it's a book by Claire Lombardi called The Most Fun We Ever Had. Oh my God, it's so good. It's a very it's a family, intricate, complex relationships, and goes into, so David and Marilyn are parents to these 4 different baby girls, and it talks about their childhoods and their complex relationships and their situations each, and how that, and it talks about Marilyn and David's come up and their story about their relationship and marriage, and everything just ties in very closely together. So it's very very intense. There's a lot of pretty neat stuff going on in there. So I'll let you guys know. I'll give you guys a full review on that one on whenever I do finish it. I really can't. It's a page turner. It's very hard for me to put it down and be productive. So I'll give you guys my official rating once I'm finished with that. And then I'll probably be pretty freaking immersed in the rest of the Christelle Dabos books that I picked up. So yeah, there's that. I would sincerely like to thank you all for listening. Let me know how you liked the episode. Like I said, if you're not, I don't think you would not be a bookie if you were here. But if you want to know if you want some more easy listening and stuff, head over to Memory Lane Morning Show. It's Memory Lane Morning Show, the title on Instagram. And you can listen to that one and kind of get a more casual podcast if you're into that, with me and me and Teddy and our very close friend Henry. So that one's really fun. I definitely I call that one the spinoff to this podcast. So yeah, leave me some suggestions on any books that you've read that are amazing, and send me a message, leave a comment on my future posts about this episode, and tell me what you guys want to hear next. Or just give it a like and tell me you love me, because I need reassurance. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. And I guess that I will be seeing you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.